All right, what's up, Facebook? I see you over there. Let me throw this up on Instagram. Hope everyone's doing well today. Coming at you live from the parking lot of the Denver International Airport. All right, fire that up. Good to see everybody. All right, happy Thursday, folks. Coming at you live from the Denver International Airport. Little bit chilly outside, shouldn't have went with a t-shirt. Hope everybody's doing awesome. It's usually Leadership Thursday, but we're going to talk about a little bit of clinical stuff today because I've got something that I've had a lot of run-ins with the past couple of weeks, and I think it's worth having a conversation. Before that, of course, since it is Thursday, it is not only Leadership Thursday, it is Gut Check Thursday. But this week, there is nothing to announce because you know what the workout is. The workout is Murph, right? So I'm sure many of you are getting after it this weekend. Maybe getting after it on Monday morning. Please, if you're new to functional fitness, make sure you go to our Facebook page. Alan Frenendahl had some great notes on there regarding the fact that Murph is not the usual Gut Check Thursday, 10 to 15 minute burner that everybody could and should do. Murph is definitely more of an intense workout that requires some preparation or some scaling. So if you want to jump in this week and join us, wonderful. Just make sure that you're setting yourself up for success and not setting yourself up for misery. So go over there and check that post out and make sure you're dialing in your target appropriately, which actually fits this conversation we're about to have this morning quite well. We're going to chat about where are you going and knowing the destination, which I think is so critical. Before we jump in, a couple things regarding courses. If you want to jump into a live course, we've got a bunch of them coming up. The weekend of June 5, 6, we've got Injured Runner in Denver. We've got Fitness Athlete in Bozeman. We've got Older Adult in Olney, Maryland. If you want to jump into an online course starting June 7th, kicking off a whole bunch of them, including Primary Care PT, Persistent Pain Comprehensive Management, Fitness Athlete, the Essential Foundations, all 8-week online courses launching on June 7th. So please join us there if you would like to. All right, team. So first, know the destination. Oftentimes, I think the discrepancy that is felt between clinician and patient is not because something quote unquote isn't working, but instead because people, the partnership is not on the same page to expectations and what we're exactly working towards. And it's that discrepancy more so than the expected result of the intervention that's driving a lot of that dissonance. So I want to really challenge all of us to understand or double check that we're understanding really well where we intend to go, where we think we're expecting to go on both a macro and a micro level when we're going through our patient care. So thinking about on a macro level with your patient, we always talk about this question of what does success look like to you? But what we see in practice is that we don't get near specific enough with this, right? We often ask that question, it probes some great thoughts, it gets people thinking about maybe what things could actually look like if we were to head in the right direction. But we don't drill down enough to actually alter what we're doing to hit the target. We don't have a specific enough aim to really be effective in heading towards. We often hear things like, I want to return to the gym. Well, that doesn't cut it because there's nowhere near enough in that response for me to actually adjust what we're doing to make sure that we are dead on with our expectations. There's so many follow-up questions that need to happen there. Do you expect to return to the gym unrestricted? Is that the goal? That you would go back to anything and everything you want to do? What about volume, right? What about frequency and intensity? What are your expectations there, right? Do you want to eliminate certain gaps before you return, right? Are there things that you've never been able to do or things that while we're here from a performance perspective, you're hoping that we can accomplish so when you go back, you actually go back better than ever? How are you thinking you'd like to return to the gym? When people say things like, I want to get rid of the pain, right? Which is a very common answer, right? What are your goals? Well, I don't want to have the pain anymore. That is nowhere close enough to be able to target anything towards. Follow-up should and could include to a non-variable 0 out of 10. Like, is that your expectation that you would literally never feel it? Or do you mean only at rest, like how we are sitting here right now? What about with your most intense and prolonged aggravating factor? Would it be acceptable to you if when you strung muscle ups or when you went for a 20 miler that you experienced 1 to 3 out of 10 recurrence of your symptoms that was gone within a couple hours of the activity? When you say get rid of the pain, what do you mean by that? By the way, do you mean just your primary symptom? So Jan, you had mentioned that issue on the back of your shoulder. It sounds like that's primary, but you do have some of that sensation in the arm. When you say get rid of the pain, do you mean both of those? And also, I know you mentioned it was unrelated, but you did speak to that shoulder blade pain on the left. Are you including that in the get rid of the pain conversation? What exactly do you mean when you're saying you want to get rid of the pain, right? These are the kind of things, if you think about the get rid of the pain one, this is the kind of stuff that drives the dissonance, because you think you're crushing it with the patient because that primary shoulder pain has went from a 9 to a 2 and you're almost there and you're almost set to discharge, when in reality, the patient's really disappointed. They still have the lingering paresthesia and contralateral shoulder pain that you really did not realize were even really a part of the goal. Obviously great if it went away, but in your mind, you thought if that pain in the back of the shoulder was gone, you were in business. You thought if they went back to the gym and did most of what they loved to do, you were good. Right? You didn't think about days of the week going back to the gym. You didn't think about locations of pain. You didn't think about what a win would be intensity-wise because you didn't know about it. You didn't really drill down. Think about time frame. Here's a huge one, right? Asking the simple question, what are your expectations regarding once you drill down on the other stuff, once we know what it really looks like to win, what are your expectations regarding timeline for that win? If we got how far along in that process, over how many weeks would you be stoked? If we got all the way to the finish line, over how many months would you be stoked? I know where you're trying to go, but what are your expectations as far as how we're going to be able to get you there? This is a lot more challenging when someone doesn't have like an event they're training for, because if they have that, it oftentimes sets the navigational buoys that you're trying to get them back to a certain level of performance for the event. The majority of our patients, though, don't have an event. So just understanding where they're trying to go is insufficient to understand their expectation, which you're trying to either meet or adjust. Be able to have an open conversation on why it's an inappropriate expectation. So that conversation about how, over what periods of time do you expect to hit which benchmarks is a critical one. Another key one is workload, or how much rent are they willing to pay? Right, this question of, okay, I think I understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish. I think I know what time benchmarks we would be hitting to really exceed your expectation. By the way, what kind of workload are you willing to put into this process? What I mean by that is, how much cross training are you willing to do? Are you willing to go to the gym and do a lot of the high intensity aerobic stuff but offload the primary issue? Are you willing to carve out 20 minutes at home to do the mindfulness to calm down the nerve? What are you willing to do to get this done? That is a huge part of the expectation, right? Because if you need behavior changes to happen, if you need accessory work to happen, if you need other things to happen, if you're going to hit certain time frames, to hit certain goals, that conversation needs to be brought up. Because if you think about expectation, that's a huge one. If people think they're just going to hit these things without putting in the work, and maybe they are, I don't know their presentation, but if they aren't, that is a big part of whether or not they ultimately feel like they were fully satisfied, their expectations were met. So understanding all of those things, what are you truly hoping to do? I mean, in significant detail, how do you expect that to feel? How much time do you think these benchmarks are going to take? How much rent are you willing to pay? These are the kind of things, when we talk about from a macro level, understanding where we're going, that's the kind of detail we're talking about. Because if you, in your mind, if that patient ultimately winds up getting back to a certain activity at the gym at a certain level of volume or intensity or frequency, but it happened far longer than they expected it to take, that last part, there's going to be that dissonance. If they're ultimately not willing to put in work alongside where you're trying to go, and you thought you could get them there, but it required the work, but they weren't ready to carve that time out or put the effort in, that's going to be dissonance. All of these things are what ultimately drive that feeling between patient and clinician of, we just aren't getting it done. right? We don't feel like we're on the same page. It's because we never drill down on this stuff. Now, that's the macro level, right? Those things are generally conversations on day one that have to happen. Where we really see clinicians getting lost, sorry if that plane's really loud going overhead, where we really see clinicians getting lost is on the micro level. This is where we tend to really drop the ball, meaning every time somebody comes back in, we know we don't treat, we sell in the first 5 minutes, right? So we have that data gathering session, your subjective asterisk signs, right? How long were you able to run? Where exactly was that pain? How was sleep quality? Your physical asterisk signs. Let me see you turn your head. Let's have a look at ULTT, right? Let's gather the data on symptom behavior and let's have a conversation about it. Here's what I think I see. But now the conversation to set the intention of the micro level target needs to be, here's where I think we're trying to go, right? So we've gathered the data, we see whether we're going in the right direction, whether we're not, but now there needs to be a quick conversation and a decision, a mutual decision of where we're trying to go. So that should sound something like this. So Chris, here's what I'm seeing, right, relative to last time. What I'm thinking for intention of the session for the next 45 minutes is here's what we're gonna do and why. Here's the focus of the session. Here's how we're gonna architect our time together to hopefully accomplish blank today. That might be understanding a lift better. That might be having the pain go from a 7 to a 4. That might be having some techniques to modulate symptoms when they're not in the clinic. That part is the decision. But that decision needs to be brought to the table. Here's where I think we're going today. Do we agree on that intention? Now, it's okay if you don't, right? It's okay if that patient responds and says, actually, here's how I'd love to use our time together. But if what they're saying is out of line with what you understand the macro goal to be, this is when it needs to be addressed. This is where the dissonance begins to develop, right? In every single session, if you're kind of re-agreeing, here's how we're going to use our micro sesh today in order to get towards our macro goal, are we on the same page? And that patient is not on the same page. You can catch it right there, right? If all of a sudden their focus is shifting, or all of a sudden you're realizing you weren't fully clear on what we're building towards, you can bring that up right now. If they start saying, I want to do more manipulation and needling, and you really thought that you were beyond symptom modulation, building fitness towards a certain functional goal, that conversation can be had. I feel like we're still lingering here, and I thought we were trying to go here, right? Those conversations on a daily basis of where you're trying to go with your session so that it builds towards what you still believe to be the long-term goal. Those conversations are so fruitful because it's what keeps you and the patient on the exact same page. When you're on the same page, your expectations are in line. And when your expectations are in line, you can build the kind of interventions that create success for both of you and avoid that dissonance. So there should be a lot of conversations that sound kind of like this, right? So today we're going to focus on some breath work to decrease that central nervous system sensitivity. First of all, to calm down that current widespread symptom, but also to give you that tool that you can use during those stressful events between now and next week. Here's what we're going to do today for an immediate result, and I believe it builds towards the goal of why. We're going to focus on carries and soft tissue work in the upper extremities today to develop that weakness of grip strength while that shoulder is keeping us away from the Olympic movements, right? It's my understanding that was the gap where we're trying to go back to better than ever. Here's how we're going to use our micro sesh towards our macro goal. Does that make sense? Is that a good use of your time? Are we on the same page? We're going to do submaximal lumbar flexion in a wide variety of patterns to decrease that guarding and fear while you build back up some of that back body resilience, so your confidence goes up and you can focus during your WODs because you're not so worried about your back when hinge patterns are programmed. We're going to proceed that with manipulation just to get the edge off the symptoms, so you're willing to explore a few more of those lumbar flexion movements. Here's what I think we're going to do. Here's why I think we're going to do it. Does that sound exciting to you as far as how we're going to use our time, and are we still going towards the same long-term goal? It's these kind of things both on a macro level and a micro level. Do you really understand where your patient wants to go? Is every intervention that you're implementing a decision that meets your mutually agreed upon micro and macro goals? If we can drill down to this level, it is going to be the attempt to do so that is going to bring up so many conversations where you were assuming something and the patient says, actually, no, right? And you're like, oh, wow, I was about to use the whole session for that, and it really was not going to meet the goal they came in with, or their goal has changed, or I'm confused about where we were originally going. Those conversations are where the magic happens that removes this consistent dissonance that we feel in some of our patients where things aren't working. It's not that they're not working, it's that you're not working towards the same goal. Think about how well you're drilling down, both globally in every session. How often are you agreeing with your patients that what you're doing is the most exciting thing that you could be doing? Think about that a little bit. I think that's where so many of our challenging patient cases, that's where we get locked up, is at that moment. All right, I got to catch this plane. Everybody, have an awesome Thursday. Those of you doing Murph, good luck. Vest or no vest, get after it. Post your times. Hashtag Ice Train, Ice Physio. Great to see you all. Have a killer day.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.